New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Hello and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin, and it is my great joy to be here today. If you're here for the first time, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Each week we have conversations with soul-centered individuals that channel their time, their creativity, their resources, their consciousness into doing good work in the world. And today is no exception. I have a dear friend of mine, Dorena Kohrs, with me today. And Dorena is a certified practitioner in feng shui, and she's been on the show a couple of times before. And so if you're interested, I am very tongue-tied today, learning more about feng shui, you can go to our previous episodes and check those out. So good morning and welcome, Dorena. It's so good to see you.
Good morning. It's good to see you too.
Yeah, and I said welcome to all the newcomers. Welcome to everyone that comes back because you enjoy these conversations. It's been a wonderful spring here. I'm in Lake Tahoe. Where are you, Dorena?
I'm in North Carolina, and just as we were talking before, I just left Lake Tahoe a few days ago. So we crossed paths.
Yeah, and you were skiing?
I was. I went to visit my brother-in-law. I have not skied since, I think it's been almost 35 years.
Oh.
And there's actually some interesting feng shui behind it, I'm realizing. So it was interesting. It was so much fun. Like I felt like I captured a part of myself I had lost. It was interesting how when I came home and I was thinking about it, how that was showing up in my home. So it was fascinating as I kind of played through all that in my mind.
Yeah, interesting. I am struggling to find the correlation between skiing and feng shui, so I'm interested in knowing.
Well, now I opened the door. I know that's not what we were originally going to talk about, but it's because there's this article kind of processing in my head right now, and I think sometimes we hide our dreams in the back of our closets, and we tuck things away. And a lot of times I'll be the one to say, like, why are you holding on? Like if I walked into somebody's house, I'd be like, why are you holding on to your ski pants from when you were literally 20? Like you do not fit in those anymore. And it's like, well, maybe I do. They don't make them like they used to. My professional self would have encouraged me as a client to let go of those things. And interestingly, we had our carpets replaced upstairs about a month ago, which required taking everything out of the closet. And so when I did, I was forced to see this big tote that actually had my old ski stuff in it. And I went through it and I was like, all right, you need to try this on. And because my professional self said, why do you still have these? And I tugged and I pulled and I'm like, yeah, I can't zipper that anymore. And so I let them go. And then decide to go to my brother-in-law's home in Kirkwood, and I literally packed books to read, knitting to do. I just picked up knitting again. I brought all of this stuff because I was going to sit in front of the fireplace while everybody else skied. But the one thing I did before I left is I went on REI's website and I bought a pair of what I would have called like granny ski pants, like I had the very fashionable ones as a 20-year-old and I just bought the really practical. And the day where everybody was going to go skiing, I was like, I think I want to go. Like I was the president of our ski club in college. Like I was like so into it. And I'm like, so I stay on the bunny hill. I don't care. Like I should try. And so I put on my granny ski pants that had pockets in all the right places. You know, my old ones had no pockets. And I feel like I recaptured myself that I had actually closed the door to so many years ago.
That's so beautiful.
But it was interesting how I let go of the old version and those ski pants. Like I'm not the college, you know, ski bunny going down all the, you know, the hard stuff. But it was a love of being on the slopes and new attire. And with my nearly 60-year-old knees, we did it differently, but it was so much fun.
I bet. Yeah, there's something so liberating about being outdoors, being on skis, doing something that's so unusual for most of us. I'm sure there's many people that ski more regularly, but having that sense of freedom and reconnecting with an old dream or an old love like that stirs up a lot of not only memories, but a lot of new energy. And
yeah, I was just gonna say that, and that's how, like, to bring the house piece into it is kind of like maybe we don't need to let something totally go, but we need to re-envision it. And how can we use our homes to support us in that, right? So I could let go of that 20-year-old version, but like, hey, that doesn't mean it's totally gone. And that's what I thought. I had packed as if it was totally gone. So just looking at our homes and where are we stuck and where can we maybe tweak something to bring back an old love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into that. Today we had originally planned to talk about feminine and masculine energies and feng shui and how to identify when our energies are out of balance and how we might bring them into balance, and how feng shui can be a beautiful support container to be able to do this in a very practical way. So will you talk a little bit about feng shui and the masculine and the feminine energies and how that relates?
Yeah, so it's, you know, the idea, I did a masterclass not so long ago on this, and the idea really started showing up when, like, our world is so out of balance, right? Like, we don't need to look far to see how the masculine and the feminine are way out of balance. And masculine isn't masculine or men, feminine or women. We all have the feminine and the masculine within us. And when we're balanced, you know, we live our best, most authentic self. But when those two energies are out of balance is where we either have the toxic femininity or the toxic masculinity. So to take a step back, the feminine is the receptivity, the intuition, the emotional intelligence, the nurturing part of us. And then the masculine energies are that action and the logic, the leadership, the courage, the decisiveness. But you need both, right? So if action without intuition, you know, we just bulldoze into something without taking a step back and saying, how do we feel? And if we're so full of emotion and we don't bring some of that masculinity into it, we don't take action. So we need both of those. When they're out of balance, the toxic femininity for me shows up a lot as codependency. I'm so worried about everybody else and how everybody else feels, and I take myself out of the equation. And then that masculinity is like, it has to be done this way at this time. And the boundaries are more walls. And so then what I started looking at is, okay, what does this look like in our homes when that feminine and that masculine are out of balance? So the toxic femininity, when we have too much of that femininity, we create space for everybody else, right? And we're like, oh, I can't take up that room for my office, right? That's reserved for everybody else. We have no pictures of ourselves, right? We make sure everybody else is represented and we take ourselves out of it. Or our personality doesn't show up. What we love, right? So, we're just taking this back seat in our homes. We don't have any boundaries, so other people's stuff creeps in, or we hold on to things out of guilt. So a lot of times when it's that out of balance, will be like, from a ancestral perspective, you'll often find somebody in that feminine toxicity of, I have to carry on. I have to take all my relatives' things, right? When somebody passes, I have to hold on to them. And you might be like, I actually don't like antiques, but I have to keep this because it was my grandmother's, my mother, whatever. Like, I have to hold on to everything, even though I don't like it. And that doesn't mean we don't honor and keep things that we love, but it's when we do out of obligation is when it starts tipping the scale. Or we will keep everything guest ready, right? But then our bedrooms, which from a feng shui perspective are representative of our inner selves, we'll abandon those, right? And they won't be comfortable, or they'll be so full of clutter, so that outward appearance looks good, but then that inner world can be more chaotic.
So when I'm kind of jumping around here. So when you have a client that comes to you, you're pretty able to read based on how they talk about their home, or if you visit their home, or you're able to pick up intuitively and just from experience where there could be some of this out of balance, especially the toxic femininity. If you're working with a woman, I would imagine. So how does that land with someone new to Feng Shui? You do a consultation and you come in and make point some of these out. And I know you well, and so I know you do it in a very gentle, loving way. But can there be, how do people react when you come in and talk about this and see the light bulbs going off?
It's such a good question, because I often say I don't approach Feng Shui like a lot of people do, right? It's because I find that it can be prescriptive or performative. I just wrote an article on AI and Feng Shui, and I'm like, if you ask AI to Feng Shui your space, you will get a performative response back. And so I do let people know up front that I'm looking much deeper, right? That what is it that you truly desire in your life, right? Is where we always start. Is what do you long for? What's missing from your life? And then let's look at how your home can support you. So I hope I approach it in a way of like, we're looking to improve your life. We're looking at how to, instead of feeling like you're hitting your head against the wall and like repeating the same pattern over and over again, it's like, where can we see that pattern in your home, and how can we shift it in your home so we can shift it in your life? So I do tell people up front, like, yeah, this is what we're doing, is we're looking at the patterns in your life, and sometimes they're harder to see, right? We don't realize we're doing those things. So it's good. It's deep work, though. It is deep work, not for the faint of heart. But I'm finding more and more that people want that, right? They don't want the superficial anymore. They're ready to dive deeper. They're ready to look at the wounds, and they're ready to heal.
Yeah. So we've touched just slightly on the feminine. Can you speak to the masculine and how, some of the typical traits of healthy masculinity and maybe not so healthy or toxic masculinity?
Yeah, so actually, I think the idea of this whole feminine and masculine and how it shows up in our homes and when it's out of balance actually came to me with the idea as spring was approaching. Well, it was actually as the new year was approaching, and then it happens again in springtime. In my world, is everybody wants to declutter, right? As you end the year, and then as you hit spring, it's like this, like, oh, let's declutter. And you will find so many decluttering challenges, out in the world. And it will be like, okay, you need to get rid of one bag every day for 7 days. And it's very rule oriented. So that toxic masculinity is very rigid in the rules. Like, you need to get rid of X number of things. You can only have 10 pairs of shoes, or dip into the minimalism world. You can have 1 pair of shoes, and this is not knocking minimalism. Like, if you do it and it feels good, great. But when you do it because you told X number of things, that becomes very rigid. That's not how you feel. It's more based upon rules. And that's how the toxic masculinity shows up in the home. I'll never forget, I have done a lot of energy work and energy trainings, and my teacher, who I've done, my Reiki and archangelic light and crystal work with, I was sitting in her living room one day, and I'm looking around, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, she could really use me to, do a little decluttering in here. And then I was like, all right, hold up. So I'm like, Dorena, how do you feel in this space? And I'm like, I feel amazing in this space. Like, I've always felt great in her space. And I talked to her, I confessed later on, and she's like, every single thing I have in here is with intention. So it's not about how much you have, but it's why you have it and your relationship to the thing. So the toxic masculinity doesn't look at the emotion of the belongings. It just looks at the rules behind it. It looks at, in feng shui, you should do X, Y, and Z, as opposed to, well, does it, like, I always ask my clients, like, does that feel good? And I had one client who, one of the feng shui things we love to do is, oranges are a very a symbol of abundance. They're yang energy. They're round. They're the shape of a coin. You put 8 of them on your kitchen table, and it can be that symbol of abundance. And I had one client, she's like, I hate oranges. I'm allergic to them. And I'm like, don't ever do that then. So the toxic masculinity would be like, you told me this thing is good, so I have to do it. And I'm like, if you have a different relationship with an orange, I don't want you to put it on your table, or a bowl of them. So that's one way. So it's ignoring our feelings. It's ignoring our intuition. I will often come into somebody's space and be like, so what do you think about, like, making this room, like, I made somebody's dining room their TV room. Like, and we totally flip things based upon their needs and their furniture. The masculine would not, they'd be like, oh no, that's not supposed to be done. This is, the structure, the boundaries. And then the feminine is like, oh, that could be kind of cool. Let's try it.
So the rigidity is, I'm sure it shows up in, well, I know it shows up in all of us, male and female, masculine. And I can see that incorporating, some ease and flow between the two will help you to create a space that is energizing, yet peaceful, inspiring, yet practical. Is that the main objective of feng shui, would you say?
It's one of them for sure, right? If I'm looking at the masculine, it's going to be much more yang. So yang is hard, it's loud, it's bright. And yin, the more feminine, is soft. It's, it's the dimmer switch. Yin energy is turning the lights down, lighting a candle. The yang is having the bright overhead lights. So in our homes, we want both, right? We don't want our home with so much yin energy, because then we just want to lay on our couch underneath, our soft, cozy blanket with the candles lit, which is great until you're like, oh yeah, I've got a paper due or whatever, I need to go get groceries. I need to go to work. So we want that balance. We want some active spaces in our home, and we want some passive spaces in our home. We want the soft curves, but there's places where we want things more structured. So we want the feng shui piece is really having the balance of both.
So you've been focusing on this for some time, the masculine and feminine, and the toxic toxic positivity. I meant that's a thing too.
That's another conversation.
So can you give us some real life examples or stories, share a little bit of insight into how bringing this up to someone has helped them either find more of, be more in tune with their masculine, or more in tune with their feminine, and how that affected their space and therefore their life or their everyday lifestyle?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example, and I have one, but it's because a lot of this work is very deep. It's also very personal.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had clients where there's a lot of grief, and it's I don't want to go there, right? Just tell me what to do so that I can feel better. And so a lot of times this work is just baby steps. How can we make a small change? And that's where I think I find it a lot is in the feelings, right? Because almost more, it's just like, I don't want to feel that. And so you'll find an absence of water energy in their homes. And so water is associated with emotions. And so that is one way I'll tell you my own story. This is probably a good place to share it, because I have a huge painting sitting in front of me that's watercolor. So water energy is watercolor artwork. It's actual water elements like a fountain. It is the colors of black, or those dark tonal colors. That's all, or wavy patterns. That's all the way that water can show up from a feng shui perspective. So I'm a classic codependent. It's something I have been working on really diligently, particularly in the last couple of years. But my house is the one that led the way on this. I did not realize how codependent I was. I mean, it was stuff I was in therapy in my 20s. I was in therapy again in my early 40s. And then I'm like, I'm good. My life's good. And did not realize until we had a flood in our house, a massive flood. So sometimes what you'll see is looking at your plumbing in your home can give you a clue as to those emotions. And if those emotions aren't flowing, oftentimes your house will mirror that with plumbing issues. Drain that doesn't flow, right? So if you think of water as emotions in your house, water is in your plumbing, and then you have a drain, maybe a tap that leaks, or you have a lot of clogs in your drains, and then be curious about it, right? So it's never we try to stay away from the judgment, but have an air of curiosity around it. So my air of curiosity is when we had this. It was the night before we were leaving on vacation. This was a couple years ago, and my husband said, "Oh, let's just turn on the dishwasher when we leave tomorrow morning." And I was like, "No, I really think we should do it tonight." So we turned on the dishwasher. We had just had our kitchen renovated a few months prior. And we went to bed. The next morning I got up, and I have fallen off. But at the time I was doing yoga every morning, and I was doing it in my closet. It was like my hidey spot where I would go. And I woke up and I was like, yeah, no, I need to go downstairs. And I wasn't sure why, but I walked down, and there was literally like a flood in my entire downstairs that the dishwasher had disconnected. The water source had disconnected. And so we quickly mop everything up. We think we have all these towels. We think everything's dry, and we go away on a week holiday. We come home, and our hardwoods are just like
Oh no.
Like a Barbie roller skate park. I mean, it was, and then we dealt with months of mold remediation. So when you think again from, if I'm bringing it through the lens of my home, I mean, it happened in my home, but mold is when water sits, when it's stagnant. What happens when your emotions sit and they don't flow, stuck in our body. So what had happened with this was such a wake-up call for me is how much that I was holding, like I had stopped my own emotions because I needed to make sure everybody else was okay. So I stopped feeling how I feel, like my true feelings, because I needed to make sure everybody else was okay. So I would contort myself to make sure everybody else was happy, because if everybody else is okay, then I'm okay. The classic definition of codependency. My home, absorbing all that energy for these years, was just like, oh no, we're done with that. I'm going to vomit emotions all over the floor. And then what was interesting is that, so what happened from there is, as I start processing this, the mold remediation took months, but I was able to do it in a very conscious way in light of my behavior and how I wanted to do things differently.
And so how did that look? What subtle changes did you make, in order to start expressing or allowing?
So this is really interesting, right? Like I became very fearful of mold. I had some people in my life who are allergic to mold and were telling me horror stories about it. And so I became very fearful around that. And then you start reading things, and then and I felt like, so the mold remediation company came, but I actually didn't feel like they had gotten everything. And it was difficult for me because intuitively, it was an intuitive thing. And my husband is an engineer, and he's like, it's fine. And so I needed to say, hey, my need is that we need to check this more. But that was hard for me because there wasn't any physical, well, at the time, I didn't think there was any physical evidence of it. So he's like, I want you to be comfortable. So it was really interesting in our marriage too, where I am much more feminine and he is much more masculine. It's like, how do we navigate this where he's saying it's fine? I'm, where my fear is kicking in. How do we navigate that? And so I was able to say, hey, I really need you to go under the house. I don't think like they're ready to be like, okay, we're done. And I'm like, not, will you please go in the crawl space? And he went in the crawl space and he came up and he's like, yeah, you're right.
Oh.
And so this is on the Friday or the Thursday of Labor Day weekend. And so we said, we have two choices. We call the mold remediation company back and tell them to fix it, but we're already not happy with them. Or, maybe we do this ourselves. And so we opted to do it ourselves and became very well versed in mold remediation, what not to do. And my husband's super, super, super handy. So we literally pulled up our subflooring that the company said we didn't need to do. So we, over that weekend, literally you could like see the dirt ground underneath my kitchen. We pulled up the subflooring. So our floors, and particularly our crawl space from a feng shui perspective, is our subconscious. And so to be able to literally dig up the mold, right? Those emotions that had been sitting there. So I'm mirroring a different way of being through my house. If that makes sense, right? So I'm excavating the stuff that I had been holding on that was sitting there. So we're literally ripping this up. And then we put down new subflooring. And the last thing I wanted to do is we had some mold defoggers. And I was like, let's just do these at the end, right? Let's just put these. We had actually cut out all the mold. But let's put in these defoggers in the crawl space. And he's like, okay, I'll do it. And I got impatient. I was like, Because the rule, which actually I forgot to say, when we did this, the rule was that I'm upstairs because I was scrubbing with, I think, vinegar and something. I'm scrubbing the floor, like the joist that we could not cut out. So I'm in the kitchen scrubbing and he's in the crawl space underneath scrubbing. And that was my rule. I'm not going in the crawl space. The crawl space is scary. Like there's snakes and there's scary things down there. I'm not going there. I will stay up here. But again, what's interesting, that's the subconscious, right? And I'm like, I'm not going to go into the subconscious until I want to put the defoggers in there and I'm getting impatient. So I'm like, Dorena, you can do this. I give myself a pep talk and I grab the defoggers and I army crawl into the crawl space with my little headlight. And he's like, honey, I told you I'm coming. And so a few minutes, he comes behind me and I'm shining this flashlight in the crawl space. And I'm like, is this it? He's like, yeah. No, this is the whole crawl space. He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, it's not so scary down here. And it was this moment of like, yeah, I actually can go into my past. I can go into the subconscious and it's not that scary.
Wow, what a moment.
Well, that's kind of how my house gave me this opportunity. It showed me this area that needed healing and gave me an opportunity to do things differently. And so that was pretty, it was powerful. And now, like, because I've been in therapy for a couple of years working on this, something will come up and I will allow myself to feel it. Like the intensity of, we've had some, just some hard stuff in our life over the last year, particularly. I'll feel it and the tears, because I always thought the tears were going to take me out. I always thought the emotions were going to be so intense that I would just not be able to handle them.
Kind of like a flood, huh?
Kind of like a flood. Like I literally thought that those emotions would flood me and literally take me out. And now what I'm discovering, I'm like, they flow. And then I'm like, oh, I'm okay. Like it's such a new experience.
Yeah. Yeah. We are right at the bottom of the hour. I want to take a minute or two for a break and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about facing our subconscious or facing what's scary. And actually, once we do it, what happens. And I want to know what happened after all that for you too, especially in your kitchen and within your relationship with your husband. We will be right back in just a minute.
Help us say thank you to all of our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Center for Spiritual Living United Life, Sunshine Cathedral, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Universal Joy Center, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, thesatyacenter, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. On behalf of New Thought Media Network, thank you, and please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network. Come be you.
And we're back. So it's such an analogy, the flooding, the going into the crawl space, you going down there and realizing this is it. So what happened after that for you internally and for you, externally within your home and in your relationship?
It's a good question. And I don't know that I've fully taken a step back to say, oh, what has happened? And I was thinking during the break, and the healing world isn't super pretty, right? I think this has allowed me to be more authentic, more vulnerable. I actually thought I was a pretty vulnerable person. That's the interesting. You would have asked me a couple years ago. I'm like, yeah, I'm an open book. I'll tell you anything. And I'm realizing like, oh, actually, no. I'm starting to, see. And so I think understanding myself at a deeper level. And so one of the things that I tell people up front is that often when we do this work, that doesn't mean, Ed McMahon, is going to show up at your door with a publisher's clearinghouse, you just won. Like when we do these things in our home, it is supporting our intention and what we desire in our life. But sometimes we need to walk through the muddy waters first. Sometimes there's something that needs to be cleared so things can become more uncomfortable before they become comfortable. But I think that's part of, for me, that's the spiritual work. So I will say one of the things that I think that this, as I've been doing my work on this, it's allowed the others around me to do their own healing work. A lot of times, one of the things that my clients, and I'm going to say my clients and I like to do is say, my life would be great if they did their work, right? If the others picked up their clothes, if I wasn't living with such a messy person. And I can't tell you how many times I say the same thing all the time. I'm like, do your work. Do your work, right? When you do your work, it is contagious. And so what that looks like is, are you holding on to that one letter in the back of your closet that has some trauma attached to it? And you're saying, no, I don't want to deal with that. And yet you're pointing a finger at your partner's pile of laundry clothes on the floor. So always focusing everybody on theirs. And so for me, part of this is what I'm seeing is giving everybody permission, because I'm not controlling everything. And that's really hard for me.
Yeah.
There's been some things that, some pretty intense things that have happened that I've had to say, what's mine, what's theirs, what should I support, and what do I just need to sit back and be uncomfortable with? And so there's been a lot of discomfort.
So you have really clearly shared your perspective and side of the story with this incident, this flooding that happened in your home that led you to some depth and personal discovery. How did it affect the rest of your family? And let's start there. Like, was it as much a thing for everyone else, or it seems like some people, things don't impact other family members the same way, and so a big crisis for one might not be a big thing for another?
I think energetically you can't help not to be impacted, right? So how it shows up for somebody else may be different, but I don't think you can shift the energy in a home without everybody being impacted in some way. And there are some people who just don't believe, right? There's just some people who are just not, but they live at a different frequency too. I'm one who's like, yeah, let's get down and figure, like, let's truly like feel the energy of things, right? But there's people who just don't, or feel it on a much different level. So I think first, I think everybody is impacted regardless if they acknowledge it or not. I think I haven't thought about it. I don't have an immediate answer about how it impacted my family, because some of it is private, not to be shared. I think it has, and I think it has caused at least my husband to look deeper at some things. He was always the one who was kind of going through life like, and he would say, "I'm dumb, fat, and happy." You know, he was happy, but not dumb or fat, but like that was his mantra, right? And I think this shift is helping him see things in a deeper way. I think for both of us, our relationship with our mothers has really been showing up, and what that looks like. And from an interesting feng shui perspective, every area of your home is associated with an area of your life. We use a tool called the Bagua map to do that. And because I know people are gonna be like, "Where's my relationship area?" If you are standing at your front door looking in, right? So as if you're gonna walk into your front door, the back right corner, if you imagine a tic-tac-toe board overlaid on top of your home.
Okay.
The back right quadrant is your relationship area. So it is associated with your one-on-one relationships, but it's also associated with the feminine energy of mother. And what has been fascinating to me is we have a deck outside of that area, which was rotting, that we had to repair. And so I'm looking at that. I'm like, oh, that's interesting that we have rotting wood here. So there was a series of things that were like breaking down in that area that we had to rebuild. And so I kind of see like, oh, we're doing this work in our homes. And then it's interesting to see how there's some emotional work paralleling it. Like adjacent, emotional adjacent is what's been happening.
So let's, for those that are new to this system, so if that's your relationship segment or quadrant or corner, or what are some of the other significant ones that people might enjoy knowing about, and maybe some ideas on how to balance energy in each of them regarding masculine and feminine energy?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna pull back a little on that to look at kind of what can people do now, right?
Okay.
Like kind of been listening to this. Because when you get into the Bagua map, sometimes we lose our mind and like, where are those lines? Where does one start and the other stop? But you can almost do this a little bit a couple ways. Let me give you a couple different ways to do it. One is if you look at your home overall, right? And sometimes I like to do this in meditation or just with your eyes closed and kind of just imagining your home. And if you were to, like, let's say this is your home, right? If you were to hold a pencil on it here, if you were going to try to balance it, then would one area be heavier than the other? So looking at that, I think, is an interesting exercise, right? Because you want balance in all areas of your home. So if you take your whole home as a whole, like, do you spend all your time on this side and none on this side? Is there a lot of clutter on this side and not on this? And so kind of trying to balance it out, because we really want to use all the spaces in our home as much as we can so that they have purpose, especially if you're thinking that they are associated with an area of your life, right? If you're abandoning a total room, it's interesting to say, oh, what area of my life is that associated with? So from a balance perspective is wanting to look at, or even take it to a single room. Maybe that's an easier concept to imagine. Like for those listening, like look at the room you're sitting in right now. And is there all the furniture on one side versus the other, so even just from a belongings perspective, looking to see how is that, is there balance in that, in the space? Or another way to look at it is if you picture, I always say very gentle water based upon my flood trauma. If you imagine water gently flowing through your home, right, kind of in a guided meditative way, you can start to see where the water doesn't want to go. Like if you do this in a meditation, sometimes you'll notice, oh, water doesn't even want to go in that room, or water is rushing really fast. Like that's a way to see where there's constriction, right? And where there's constriction, we want things to flow freely in order to create that balance.
Would you say that meditation is a good step or a good way of navigating this practice, maybe, of visualizing water, or just getting a sense of things through meditation, as a way of sort of stoking that curiosity, or maybe sparking some intuition about someone's home or someone's room, where there could be blockages, or where you have an aversion, or where you have an attraction? That meditation is a good starting point, maybe?
I think that is. I think it's a good place, and really just it's being curious about your spaces, right? And it's one question rather than, one of the things in the School of Interior Alignment, from where I teach, from the Lin Academy, we say that there's 2 rules in feng shui. If it feels good, it's good feng shui. If it feels bad, it's bad feng shui. So rather than looking at a particular feng shui rule, it's more like, how do I want to feel in my life, right? And then, do I feel that in my space? Like if I say I want to feel creative in my life, is my home creative? Or do I have, all the furniture from, and I happen to love IKEA, it's just what came to mind, right? Like I have all IKEA furniture and no color, right? But if I want to feel creative, maybe I want like original works of art, right? Or I want to be a little bit more eclectic, that all the chairs don't match, they're a little bit different. So I can ask, like, how do I want to feel in my life? And then create that feeling in your space. And you can do that through meditation, or, just through that exercise of how do I want to feel? And do I feel that in this space? Walking into a particular area and say, like, how do I feel in this space? And how does your body feel when you're in that space? Really tapping into that.
So if someone's watching that has been listening to all that you've been sharing, and they have identified maybe a space or a room or some part of their house that they have an aversion to, what would you suggest for them in that instance? It could be for a number of reasons. It could be a catch-all space, or just so you have kind of a weird feeling, don't like that room, or is that something to read into, or is it something that can be fixed, or not fixed, but rebalanced with maybe moving things or placing an object in them in that place?
Yeah, no, it's information. It's all data points, right? It's all like, this is information of like what's going on here, right? So, again, that air of curiosity, like, why don't I like this room? Is it too dark? Is it a catch-all? So then, if it's from a clutter perspective, it's like, okay, can I do some decluttering? Why has this space become the home of the dumping grounds? Is it a place where I have everybody else's stuff in it, that there's nothing me in it? It's like, I always hated basements, right? Again, it's that subconscious crawl space thing. Like, yeah, I don't want to go down there. So I think that's the first place, is really looking at, if you can name why you don't, what it is about the space that's uncomfortable, and then start to make changes, right? And sometimes it's small changes are amazing. Like, you don't have to do some grand, renovation. But can I do a little bit of decluttering? Can I open the blinds? Maybe I move the furniture around? And even when we don't know the answer to why we're uncomfortable in that space, is actually taking some small step to shifting it. And that's, or if I can come in, I can help you understand what that might be with questions, right? Because I can start seeing the patterns, I can start seeing what the space is saying. And so some of it's literally, and what I'll get is a feeling about something, and I'll be like, and what's hard, they often say you can't read a bottle inside the label, or you can't read the label inside the bottle. And so our homes are just so familiar, right? We're in them all the time. So we don't realize that things are off. But if somebody else can come in and be like, oh, well, tell me about that, because it actually doesn't seem to fit or flow with the rest of the space. And then you're like, oh, well, that actually was my ex painted it. I've had that before. Like, oh yeah, that was from my ex who betrayed me and forgot. You just thought it was this beautiful piece of artwork, and lo and behold, it actually has the energy behind it is not positive. So I think making some of those small changes in that space, and if we do bring the Bagua map into it, I can look at what area of your life it's associated with. Right. So if it's like, if the room happens to be the relationship area, which we've talked about, and you're just like, oh yeah, I don't spend any time in that, then what I'm going to ask you is like, oh, tell me about, probably not in this directive a way, but tell me about your relationships. Like, is there anything uncomfortable? And if you're like, yeah, I've been hurt in all my relationships, and I'm pretty guarded. And I find that once you can see that correlation between your life and your space, it allows you to make the changes in the space that are energetically going to support you, because you've set your intention. I want to show up more authentically. I want to show up more vulnerably in my relationships, more openly. So that's going to be really hard for me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift my space around to support the relationship that I want to have. Right? I'm going to create this environment in a way that is how I want to feel in a relationship. Then I want this space to feel that way. Does that make sense? I'm not sure I explained that well. But let's say, you walk into the room and say, how would I describe this space? So if I know this is my relationship area and I ask you to describe it, and you say, it's really suffocating in here, or it's really dismal. And then be like, oh, do you feel suffocated in your relationships? Because how we describe a space is often how we describe that aspect of our life. And then say like, well, how do you want to feel in relationship? Like, oh, I want to feel connected. I want to feel like I actually have space. I want to feel, I need a little more space in my relationships. I don't want to feel smothered. Well, then maybe we need to take some furniture out of the space, so there's actually more room to maneuver.
Yeah, this is so fascinating. So people work with you one-on-one, and you also have groups, or can you share a little bit about that? Because I'm sure people are hearing you, thinking about their own space, their own relationships, some of the examples you've used, the subconscious, being afraid to go down in the basement, or, feeling suffocated. And they may think, oh, this is definitely a way I could, make some changes, bring some balance in my life. What does that look like when someone's working with you, and how do people work with you?
Yeah. So there's a couple. So one really easy step. So if you're listening and you're like, I have this thing in my life I want to shift, or I actually am not quite sure what it is, I have a quiz. And so that's going to like walk you through. And so it's a free quiz. And it will ask you, I forget how many life questions, right? And at the end of it, it's going to give you your results. And so based upon the answers to your questions, the quiz will say, hey, it looks like, you really would benefit from working on your wealth, right? It seems like you've got some things right now around money. So that would really benefit to work on that area of your life. And to do that, the quiz is going to say, hey, here's the wealth area of your home. It's going to tell you how to find that out. And here's some things to do in that space. So that's like a free resource that's that will help you right away with that Bagua map. It's going to help you with one of the areas, specifically the area that you most need to work on based upon your
That's amazing.
So that's a really good resource. And then I also write a weekly article in Substack. So you can, there's a free subscription so that you can get the Friday. And this is all on my website. Like you can see the link to the quiz on my website, a link to subscribe. It's called The Intentional Home, but that's just Friday articles. And that's for free subscribers. And then for $5 a month, you can attend a free workshop.
Oh, nice.
So those two are free. And then I do a one-on-one session where we sit down and we talk and say, hey, what's going on? Right? What do you want to see different in your life? What feels hard right now? So in conversation, we start there. And then I'm like, okay, now show me your house. And let's see the patterns that you just talked about in your life. I'm going to show you how they're showing up in your home. Then I'm going to give you small changes in your home so that it will support that shift you want in your life. So that's a 2-hour private session. And then the other thing I have, it's a program based upon that private session. So we do that work, right? We identify it. And I say, okay, here's some changes to make in your house. But I have a program called Hierarchy where you go from there to a 6-week group program where we go through these steps of, in the private session, we identify your space to work on. And then we jump into the group session and say, okay, now we're all as a group working in our individual spaces, going to go through these steps to shifting the energy in your home. So the steps are decluttering and cleaning and organizing, and then the feng shui concepts. But we do that in a small community. So you're not like me saying, okay, do these things in your home, go have fun, which for some people works well, right? But some people really benefit from that community of knowing there's people working side by side with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that's very helpful for people, that level of hearing other people's stories and experiences, and then to have that accountability in place based on, you're not just doing this by yourself. You've got other people. It somehow feels easier when there's a group of you doing the same thing. And
historically, I find that the group, because it's limited to 12 people, because I want to keep that tight community so that I do private sessions for everybody, but then it's really hands-on and I intimately know everybody's space because I've done a private session. And so now in community, we're working on a lot of the same things, right? So which is always, that synchronicity is cool.
What do some of your people report after working with you in this way?
A lot of times people will be like, that they have been struggling with the same space for so long that they have, particularly in the hierarchy, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've actually been able to make a difference.
Wow.
And I think really looking at the emotional piece with it, it's the connection. It's connection between your life and your home. And when you can make that work becomes so powerful.
Yeah, I can see that. And I know that because you and I have worked together. We've done what you've been describing, and it's extremely helpful and really gives you a sense of belonging in your space, which I think is important, to have that deep sense of belonging and sovereignty in one's own space. Well, we are right here at the top of the hour. Dorena, it's been such a joy to have this conversation about the masculine and the feminine and balancing energies. And for all of you watching that would like to get in touch with Dorena, you can do so at her website, Space Doula. And you can see that behind her on her wall. Yep, your head's in the way. spacedoula.com. And thank you. And I look forward to chatting with you one-on-one. And I look forward to having you back in the future to talk about what you've been working on. Thank you, Dorena.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. If you've enjoyed this, make sure you come back next week. And if you would like to support this show, Growing Edge Live, you can do so. at our website, growingedgelive.com. And thank you to New Thought Media Network, our producer, and the thesatyacenter, our sponsor. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge.